Lake George Battlefield Moments, a production of Lake George Battlefield Park Alliance, preserving our area's incredible history. Here's the president of Lake George Battlefield Park Alliance, John DeNuzzo.
Welcome to Lake George Battlefield Moments. Our guest on this episode is Lauren Roberts, Saratoga County historian and chair of the Saratoga 250 Commission. Welcome back, Lauren.
Glad to be here.
Okay, the Battles of Saratoga 1777 is really your county's milestone American Revolution event. But on May the 3rd, you're hosting a tour about this Ballston raid of 1780. How significant was the raid?
So in 1780, which is actually 3 years after the famous battles of Saratoga, there was a community along the Middle Line Road that had a lot of militiamen that were living there. They had mostly come in from New England in the earlier 1770s. And this raid was actually pretty significant if you were a member of that community. There were people that were killed. There were 26 people taken captive and brought back to Canada, kept as prisoners. There were some enslaved people that were also captured as part of that and were taken back to Canada. It really decimated the community. A lot of the buildings and the mills were burned. And it showed that the loyalist raids that were coming in from Canada were still pretty effective as late as 1780 in the war. Okay.
As I said, I'm in. I can't wait to see it. What particular sites will we get to see once we register?
So the bus tour is about a 4-hour tour. It's going to leave from Ballston Spa. We're going to head north along the Middle Line to talk about some of the families that were living there. And then we're going to head up to the very northern part of the county, the confluence of the Hudson River and what is now the Great Sacandaga Lake, but at the time was the Sacandaga River. And this is where Captain John Monroe and his raiding party of about 200, largely British, but also there were some native scouts, Mohawk, that were with him as well. And they came south from that confluence. They followed the old Indian trails in their terms along the Sacandaga until they got to Daly Creek and then headed over what we would now call Lake Desolation towards Middle Line Road. And that's where they started their raid from. So they moved on to Middle Line, and as they were moving, they were capturing people. There were people that were killed and buildings that were burned. So the bus will follow that. Also, recently, the town of Milton historian Mike Companion spearheaded an effort with the Milton 250th Committee to put in a kiosk about the 1780 raid on Ballston, which is located on the corner of 67 and Middle Line Road. So we'll make a stop there so that you can see the kiosk. We will have lunch in the town of Greenfield at the park. It'll be a break for us to grab a bite to eat, but also it's near where the Cateros Creek is, and that was where the raiders came through. And then, of course, when they turned around and came back towards Canada. So you get to see a little bit of the northern part of the county that people may not always associate with the American Revolution. And, as a reminder, in what is now the town of Corinth, the Jessups, which is known as Jessup Landing, the Jessup brothers were loyalists. There were several loyalists that the British knew of in the area, and that's how they were able to kind of come down undetected. They knew where they could find protection during their raiding parties. So it really is a Civil War story. It is neighbor against neighbor. The raiding parties that were coming down from Canada, especially these 200 men with Captain John Monroe, they knew the people by face, by name that were living on the Middle Line. Certainly people that were leaders in the militia, like Gordon and Tyrannus Collins, they were absolutely targeted and largely in a revenge capacity, because the loyalists who had lived in the area, they had been treated pretty badly by the Patriots, by the Albany County Militia there. So this is really revenge. It's really a raw, unfiltered raid where you see just the passion, the anger between neighbors, and which side they choose. It's a real, very, very intense raid. And it really, I think, speaks to the larger battles of the American Revolution in largely taking place in neighborhoods, in smaller areas, smaller skirmishes, and not always on the big battlefields like Saratoga.
Well, the history aspect of this tour sounds fantastic, but I must tell you also, like much of our region, the spectacular scenery that people will see on this tour. I mean, the confluence of the Sacandaga and the Hudson by whatever name, and in early May or this time of year, it'd just be unspeakably beautiful, I think.
Absolutely. The South Shore Road that runs along the Great Sacandaga Lake now, it's a beautiful road, and you'll get to see the budding trees. And, there is some older architecture in the northern part of the county also that you'll get to see. Not necessarily on the Sacandaga because it was flooded in 1930, but there certainly is a lot of beautiful nature in our region.
Yes, sure is. Now, who's leading the tour?
The tour is led by Jim Richmond. He is the author of War on the Middle Line, a book that he wrote several years ago that focused on the community on the Middle Line and then also the raid and the aftermath of it. So he'll be leading the tour, and he's actually going to speak the day before at the symposium. So if you attend both the symposium and the bus tour, you'll get a little preview the day before about the community. But you don't need to attend the symposium to be on the bus tour. It will be its own separate tour, and you'll get all the information you need that day.
Do you know if there'll be books for sale on the tour in addition to at the symposium?
Yes, we can definitely make that happen.
Good. Okay, so people listening to this podcast before May the 3rd and would like to attend, how do they go about doing that?
You can go right on our website, saratoga250.com. The tickets are $75 and they include lunch, and you can reserve your ticket right on the website. And we do require reservations for the bus tour.
Yep. Okay. No, so you have the Turning Point Women in War Symposium May the 2nd, this tour May the 3rd. What other Saratoga 250 programs are happening this year? I know next year is a big year for you, but what about the rest of 2026?
Yes, we have lots of events going on, notably around 4th of July, right? We know that there are some big national celebrations, but in this area, we know that the Declaration of Independence really didn't get here as quickly as maybe people would assume. We know that a public reading was ordered in Albany on July 19th. So in partnership with the Saratoga National Historical Park, we're having a public reading of the Declaration of Independence by members of the community on Sunday, July 19th. That also leads us into Saratoga County Fair Week, where we will be there all week with the Saratoga 250 marquee tent, with exhibits about related to the Declaration of Independence and founding documents, and also this area in 1776, kind of what was going on here. We're going to have all of our municipal historians in Saratoga County create mini exhibits about how their communities were affected. So whether they had a Revolutionary War veteran settle in their community, whether they have a site in their community, it's their chance to really put on a display how their history connect with the Revolution. And then, of course, moving into the fall, that's our big season where we'll partner with Saratoga National Historical Park for the anniversary of the first battle, which is the weekend of September 19th. And then, of course, our siege weekend, which will take place on Columbus Day weekend in conjunction with I Love New York's Path Through History weekend. And then actually this year, Surrender Day, which is October 17th, falls on a Saturday. We're going to do something a little bit different. We've in the past, we always do a school program. It's so nice that the kids can actually walk from their school, the kids in Schuylerville. That's where Burgoyne's troops were actually dug in during the siege. So they're actually walking in the footsteps of the soldiers that came down to lay their arms down at the ruins of old Fort Hardy on what is now Fort Hardy Park. They actually take that same pathway. We're still going to do that on Friday, October 16th. But on Saturday, we are going to work to several sites in the Schuylerville area open. And we're working on a tour, a trolley tour for that. So stay tuned for details. But those are our big events. And of course, just picking up momentum leading into 2027, which is our big year.
Super. I bet. Just one last question. Is there a sustained effort, either organized by your office or by municipal historians, to locate and somehow preserve grave sites from Rev soldiers?
It's a good question. So yes, there is. And it's actually through the William G. Pomeroy Foundation. They're an organization out of Syracuse. They're in partnership with the Sons of the American Revolution. You can apply to them for a Patriot burial marker. We were able to get 3 different Patriot burial markers, not last year, but the year before, for cemeteries in Greenfield, the town of Charlton, in the town of Stillwater. But we have in our office, we've done a lot of research in trying to locate Patriot burial records, because in order to get these signs, the Pomeroy Foundation does require primary source documentation, A, that they were actually in the war, so pensions usually, and B, that they are actually buried there. So you do need either a gravestone. If the gravestone is not visible, you need to find, like a burial permit record. They're pretty stringent about about the sources that you use, and rightfully so. We want the signs to be accurate, but yes, there's absolutely an effort, and that is, in partnership with the Sons of the American Revolution too. So check it out. You can go to wgpfoundation.org and look up Patriot burials. And if you have a cemetery in your municipality, work with your local historian, your municipal historian, or your county historian to try to document those and get a sign.
Good info. Thank you so much, Lauren. And we appreciate your visit on the podcast and all you do to promote our region's history.
Thank you very much for having me.
Our website is lakegeorgebattlefield.org. One more time on the Saratoga website.
Saratoga250.com.
Lauren Roberts, thank you so much. We thank you for being a part of our history.
Lake George Battlefield Moments, a production of Lake George Battlefield Park Alliance, preserving our area's incredible history. For more information or to check out the latest podcast, go to lakegeorgebattlefield.org and listen live on Saturday mornings to Lake George Battlefield Moments on 93.5 Lake FM.